Hey, welcome. I am so incredibly excited to kick off the first of our very successful series. Like, I know it's going to happen. EXP University bringing you the EXP Executive Masterclass. And there are a few things happening in our industry right now. We are at August 15th and headed towards the settlement deadline for the National Association of Realtors, which is this Saturday. And so there's been a few things happening. We wanted to make sure that you had everything in your toolbox ready to go. So we thought we'd have a really honest discussion about what we know today, how to best prepare and take care of our clients. And so with that, let's go ahead and get into it. When we start to look at where we're at, our executive mastery class is all around buyers and next. We want to look at where opportunity and fiduciary they come together. So as we look together, I know this industry, so much has changed. I've been in the business about 26 years. And for those of you I haven't met, my name is Holly Mabery. I'm the Senior Vice President for Brokerage Operations with eXp Realty. And when I look back just over my career in the last 26 years, it was a really quick snapshot of all of these things that have changed. So in the mid 1990s, we saw sub-agency go away and we saw the rise of buyer's agency. Some of you may have heard the phrase, it's Latin, caveat emptor. Well, buyer beware. See, back in the day, everybody worked for the seller. Now, in the 90s, we felt like buyers should have representation too. And that really became a thing. Well, in 1996, if you talk to any of the agents who were around back then, it felt like a big, scary deal. There were changes. How were we going to work? What was going to happen? But also recall, this is still at the time of the MLS book. We'll go a little bit forward. And I remember the book going away, 2000s. I know some of you are like, what is the book? Yeah. Ask some of the folks who are in your office. The book still exists. They may even have a copy at home. The rise of the internet, and we started to see MLSs go online. And as MLSs went online, so did our companies. And that saw the rise of the virtual office website, which created this whole new issue around Realtor.com and Zillow. Then 2007, and I can remember it like it was yesterday. It was mid to late September, and the phone stopped ringing. And it didn't seem like it rang again for about a year and a half. When we saw the short sale and financial crisis of the late 2000s, it was really, really difficult. A lot of us adjusted our business tremendously. We got into short sales, which at that time, it was kind of an oxymoron. You thought it would be a quicker sale. No, it was anything but. And we all adapted and got really scrappy about how we took care of our clients. I'd argue that that was such a professional's market. I know for me, it taught me how to communicate. It taught me how to follow up. It taught me how to take care of my clients at such a high level. It was a game changer. Then we saw COVID. My goodness, that was a completely different set of circumstances. We learned to communicate with people via video. We didn't get to see them. In many instances, we were showing properties we didn't even get inside of and making deals happen because families had to move. We made it happen in the early 2000s. So I set you all up for success in this way. We've seen change before. We will continue to see change because that is the type of industry we're in. But at the end of the day, we will get through this together. It's just been a lot of angst leading up to what will be Saturday. So when you start to look at where we're at, our focus fiduciary, and fiduciary is a really cool F word in its core. It's how we take care of one another. When somebody elects you to be their fiduciary, they're trusting you to guide them through a process to something of value. You're managing their money or their assets. When you think of this overall, it becomes really important because your ability to share with them what they can expect, how you show up, and how you follow through will be a game changer. As we set the stage for today in our conversation, I really want you to think about your good faith and your candor and care with loyalty as people elect to work with you. Buyers are scared right now. They're watching interest rates go up, go down. We've got an election this year. This is nothing we haven't seen before. but the opportunity to sit and have a conversation about what they can expect going forward is going to be the secret sauce. You and I having that conversation in honesty and transparency makes a huge difference. Now, I know some of you are like, yeah, but Holly, my business, it's a little bit different. I've got you. Let's set you up for success. So, in its core, we've got our fiduciary, how we're going to work, what it looks like, where we're going. Now, I want you to accentuate your consistency. See, the hardest thing you and I will ever do is show up regularly. It's why people have trouble with weight loss. It's why people have trouble going to the gym all the time. Like everybody's a great gym rat in January. Well, my goodness, talk to me about August. What are you doing? And that's the biggest challenge. When you and I can accentuate our consistency in these three areas, it's a game changer. See, consistency is value. The more you show up, that's why people go to Starbucks and they spend $5. That's why everybody loves to go to Disneyland. The consistency of walking in, yeah, I'm super happy to pay $150 a ticket to go in because I know I'm going to have a first class experience. What does that first class experience look like with you? So your value is tied to these three things. How you use and advocate through forms. Now, some of you are like, oh my gosh, there's so many new forms. I'm a little overwhelmed. Some of them don't make sense. I'm struggling a little bit. And I've got forms for my brokerage. I've got forms for my local association, for my state association, and new MLS rules. I totally understand. At the end of the day, the best thing that you can do forms wise is understand your core forms that you're going to need to advocate the best for the client that's in front of you. If you're taking care of a buyer, all right, can you explain it in such a conversational way that they're like, yeah, that makes sense? See, if you have to use legalese and you're injecting therefore and wherefore and however, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Einstein always said, if you can explain it simply, you understand it. But if you cannot, you simply don't understand it. And when you start to go forward, it becomes one of those. Now, tools and resources. What are the resources at in your toolbox? For some of us, we've always leaned into the MLS, especially the last few years. I would submit to you that Zillow, Realtor.com, your county records, my goodness, other websites, other brokerages. I know for EXP, we've got EXP exclusives. We're leaning into that quite a bit. Oh my goodness, there are so many things that you can use and leverage to leave no stone unturned to find out more information for your client and finding the right property, making the best offer, and then following through on each step of the way to close of escrow. Now, you get into market and inventory specifics. I live in kind of a rural area of Arizona. And one of the key things that I want you to know about your market, what inventory do you have? What are you expecting to come? What are builders doing in your area? Are lots being divided? Are you seeing new construction? Are you seeing remodels? Are you seeing renovation as far as commercial spaces? But also, what can you expect as far as extension of sewer lines, electricity, you know, high fiber as far as Google or anything like that? What does that look like that people can have access to? People are willing to pay for convenience and understanding if you can save them time and money. Understanding what's in the market and the inventory that's today as well as tomorrow saves them time, helps them make better decisions. It allows you to consult at a higher level. And then finally, what is the process that's unique to your locale? In some states, in some areas, mine, we're required to pump the septic by law prior to close of escrow or within 6 months of title transfer. Well, in other areas, you may not have to worry about that. But my goodness, you certainly have to do a sewer scope. Maybe you're doing radon testing. Maybe you're doing other kinds of things that the average buyer just can't Google. So, what does that look like in how you set people for success? See, by knowing those three things, you start to accentuate your value proposition. I don't care if you're brand new to the business or if you've been in it for over 40 years. If you know those three basic core skills, you can do anything. But let's get you into preparing for success because you can know those things. You can be a master of forms. You can be a wizard with what is in your market. and then also how to help buyers through the process. But in preparing for success, we need to level up in this new market. See, the resources you build today are going to make all the difference. And I want you to think about a few things. And some of you are like, she's going to say video. She's going to totally say video. I feel it. Yeah, I'm going to say video. Friends, right now, the way we communicate is via video. Look at where you're watching me. You're probably on YouTube, or you may be watching a replay, maybe Instagram. This is what I will say: video conveys faster. The mind can absorb pictures and voice and sound so much faster. So think of it this way: when you Google yourself, what shows up? What does your LinkedIn look like? What does your social media look like? Are you advocating for how your business grows? Are you explaining things in such a simple way that people wouldn't think to go anywhere else because you are the true resource that they need in their back pocket? Our phones are a wonderful resource because they allow us to access the world with just a couple of clicks. When you look at putting that in somebody's hand, the power that is you, that is in here, oh my gosh, lights out. So, what does it look like when you Google you? How are you representing yourself? Then I want you to think about what media you have. If I were to reach out to you today, could you send me links to your website? Could you send me links to a video that explains things about you, about your company, about how you work? What's changed in the process? How does agency work in in your state? Also, finally, when we're working together and we're walking through the house, and maybe I notice the deck has some dry rot, or we might need a new roof in the next year, do you have vendors at the ready that you can share with me as we're under contract, or are you constantly looking things up? See, to just give somebody Google is not enough. I would argue that's an abdication of fiduciary duty. See, there's this thing that a lot of people have said about the rule of three when it goes to making references to a vendor. This is what I'll say: there's no such thing as a rule of three. There is more than one and less than the phone book. And some of you are like, Holly, you just dated yourself. Yes, I totally dated myself. More than one. Give people choice always when you're referring vendors. But if you only hand somebody Google or the phone book, you say, hey, good luck with that. You've abdicated your fiduciary, because do you know people in your local market that are really great at roofs or really good at scoping sewer lines? Yes, you do. So refer them. And if you don't, maybe you're brand new to the business or brand new to an area, that's okay. I want you to crowdsource people, maybe past clients, agents in your office that can help and guide. Because if you've got that secondhand knowledge of, hey, I haven't used, but a person on my team has, they've had great success with these couple of people, more than one, less than the phone book. See, when you and I prepare for success and we've got these things at the ready, we get more comfortable in going out and meeting with people. We get more comfortable in returning that phone call. The market we're in is absolutely around how we show up for the people in their needs today. But if you're so busy getting ready, you'll never meet the people today that need you. And so I want to invite you to consider what's going on in your business today. What do you need to get ready? And go ahead and chunk it out. One or two things a week. Get it ready so when you're really rolling, especially while we're in the quote slow season, depending on where your market is, that allows you to move forward in such a way it makes a difference. Now, let's talk about packaging, right? Packaging their benefit. And I want to give a huge shout out. I was working with one of our regional directors this week on this class and preparing for you all and what that looks like. And Beth Adams said to me, she said, at the end of the day, it's not about demonstrating your value. It's about the benefit to the client. What is your benefit? See, I can talk about my value all along, but if my value does not meet their need, I'm of no value. I'm valuable to me. I can go work with somebody else. But what is the package benefit to the client? So when you look at your business and how you put things together, what is the package benefit to the client? How does that show up? And it really comes down to two things. Are you saving them time or money? Because people pay for convenience all the time. If you want an Uber, great. It's right there at your fingertips. Oh my gosh, the small Uber is out. It's going to be cheaper, but my goodness, they're 5 minutes away. But Uber XL, they are right here, and it's $10 more. But you know what? They're right here. I've got to get to the airport. I'm totally taking that. We see it happen all the time. So why not package yourself in such a way that people see the ease and the time? What does that look like? Now, when I talk about packaging, let's break it down in these ways. And fortunately, we've been talking a lot about this since the NAR settlement was first announced back in March. First, I want you to think about showcasing your savings for clients. We're going to focus on saving them money. How much have you helped people save in maybe your negotiating skills, in price coming down, or even concessions that you've gained, concessions for closing costs or other things? It's a game changer. It's so exciting when you can help somebody get into the home that they really want and you've saved them money. You should be keeping a list. Look at the last 6 months. Look at the last year. Talk to people about that. Be able to showcase that. And then sometimes people are willing to pay more for time. If you can give me time back in my day, oh my goodness, let's go. It makes all the difference in the world. So, talk about how long it's taking to buy a home in your market right now. NAR has always published different things with regard to the home buyer and seller survey. It comes out every November. And on average, they're saying that it takes about 10 weeks for a buyer to find the right house. Okay, cool. 10 weeks is a long time. Are you better than the national average? Could you help people? What are your techniques to do that? See, if I'm a buyer and I have to be in because I'm starting a new job in a certain time frame, I'm looking for an agent that can meet my needs. What is my package benefit by working with you? Right now, NAR tells us through the home buyer and seller survey, on average, most buyers only interview one agent. It's a little over 50%. But when you start to look at our changes that we're experiencing right now in the industry, I'm kind of on the fence. I think that that will stay pretty stagnant. Most buyers will only interview one agent. But this is the thing. If you can start to package yourself in such a way and you're showcasing that on the internet, on your website, on your social media, that people recognize how you show up for them and they haven't even met you yet, game changer. Why wouldn't they hire you? See, at the end of the day, I can Google a lot of stuff. I can look up what the thing is on my skin. I can look up, what medicine to take when I have a cold. It doesn't always tell me what I need to know in long-term health. I can look up how to buy a house. I might even be able to find it online, but it doesn't necessarily walk me through everything that you have learned through all the schooling, every deal and transaction you've done. And that's what I'd invite you to think about. All right, so there we are. We've got probably two buckets of buyers right now, right? And the buyers that we're seeing in online leads, maybe they are cold leads that are coming in through Zillow or Realtor.com, maybe a sign call, folks you haven't ever met before, but they get a hold of you and they're ready to go. Then we may have those leads that are referred to you, they're past clients. They work a little bit differently. There's two different mindsets here, and neither of them are wrong. Now, I'll subject to you that, yeah, I probably simplified this a little bit. That's okay. When you start to look at how we peel back the onion and go to next in how we take care of clients, I just want to give you some basic skills, some basic ideas to think about and then expand on. That's what this is about. Real estate's personal. This is a relationship business. So whatever works for me may not work for you. And that's cool. But I want you to take the best ideas and elevate them, make them their own, and go from there. So, internet sign call, you're probably looking at a more instant response. They're probably standing out in front of the house potentially. Building trust, it has to happen super quick and it's kind of awkward. So, how do you do that? What does that look like? So, preparing in advance, whew, huge deal. Now, referral past client, you've got maybe a longer term strategy. Maybe these folks have been watching you in action and how you take care of people. They see you at meetings, how you interact. They like your style. They like the way you communicate, your follow up. There's an opportunity with those folks perhaps to sit down and have a strategy session. If they're a past client, maybe you get to update them on what's going on just in your, reach out and phone calls to your top 100 as you do every month. Those are different opportunities. Now, let's zero in on the cold leads. I want to give you this four-step process that hopefully can kind of get you in that mindset of what to do next. And I loved how simple this was, talking with a couple of different great EXP icon agents who were sharing, like, this is how I'm working right now. And so this is an amalgamation of a couple of different folks in the way that they're rocking it. First, they're answering the call. I know, it's simple, it's easy. Pick up the phone when it rings. I want you to establish right then and there what property or properties do they want to see. And the script could go something like this. Hi, it's Holly. How can I help you? I'm with EXP. Oh, you want to see 789 Main Street? I'd love to show you that property. Awesome. When would you like to see that? I have availability this afternoon at 4 and another appointment at 6, or I can meet you tomorrow. What's best for you? See, I want you in control of that appointment, by the way. And then it's like, okay, great. This afternoon at 4 is fantastic. Now, before I'm going to send you a few things over, but before we go, I want to make sure, were there any other properties that caught your eye or you were interested in? And also, have you had any other contact with another agent, perhaps signed something? I need to establish right now, guys, if somebody has signed something with another agent. Absolutely critical. If they say, yes, I have, okay, awesome. I'd love to show you this property, but I want to make sure I'm not stepping on another agent's toes with what you have signed. It's critical. You got to do it. So I want you to establish the property, set the appointment, make sure there's no other properties, and then say, okay, I'm going to text you a quick video for you to understand how we work in our state. And then I'm going to follow up. Would that be okay? Yep, no problem. Send over that video where you're explaining how agency works in your state. You have a choice. These are the types of agency. This is how I go to work for you. And oh, by the way, when you're ready, you would sign this form. And then I follow up and say, okay, did you have any questions? No, we're good. Okay, fantastic. I'm going to send over this form that is required for me to be able to move forward. And part of that is, if you choose to purchase one of these houses we see today, this would be my fee. Let me know if you have any questions. Send it over. They DigiSign it or DocuSign it. You get it. You go show the property. Now, while you're in the house, that happened all really fast. So it's like steps 2 and 3. You're in the house. Guess what you're doing? You're building trust. You're helping them understand what's next. And then, as you get to the end of your time together in that house, you say, look, I would love the opportunity to be your agent for a longer term. If you have any interest, this is what would happen next. But I am available and any questions you have. What's so great about that is you set them up for what next is. And next is that expanded buyer broker agreement. It could be the EXP buyer broker agreement or your state buyer broker agreement. Your choice, whatever works best. But now you've had that opportunity to build trust. They see how you communicate. You're walking through the house, you're pointing things out because you've had that opportunity. This is what I will say though. You can't have a buyer broker without agency. You've got to marry those two together. Buyers have to understand how you work and why you work. That's where fiduciary comes together. So it's really simple when you start to look at that cold leads process. Now, when you start to go into consistency with your past clients or referrals, you want to set up strategy. And you're always talking about strategy. Back in the day, olden days, last week, some people may have called this a counseling session. I would invite you to consider a strategy session. I want you to set up, focus on timing, location, what's important to them, right? This is the with them. What's in it for me? It's what's in it for your buyer. Explain agency and review buyer broker and the why. What's going on? I didn't have to sign this the last time I bought a house with you. What does this mean? How do I work? And then I want you to pivot because this is such a critical time in our market. We're moving in some markets from a very hot seller's market to equilibrium. In some price ranges, we're moving from sellers to buyers. Like it's a huge swing. So you want to be targeted in how you communicate and how you go forward. You've got strategy to target. And when you make that pivot, they come with you because you've set them up for success, talking about how you work, why you work, what other things you're offering that package services. You're explaining how you work, what agency means. I love the script. In our state, you get to choose your agent. But until you do, please, if you go into an open house, just remember anything you say could be used against you in a negotiation until you elect your agent and you sign a buyer broker. It's really important that people understand that. I love that script. And I've used it for years because it really is impactful. People are like, what do you mean? And then you get to start talking about strategy, negotiating, um, how that works. And when you walk into an open house, that person in there is working on behalf of the seller. It's a huge deal and it's a really cool opportunity. Now, finally, you get into the supporting, right? You're establishing the credibility. And what I love so much in talking to one of our great icon teams is they said, right now in this professionals market, if we establish that if then that, if this then that, our credibility is reaffirmed when we tell them something and it comes true. This is how this is going to go. And then it happens. This is how we'll use the contract in this way. And then it happens. Those types of opportunities, going back to our three basics, when I know my forms, when I know my inventory, when I know my vendors, how I show up, I establish that credibility. I establish future referrals. I establish why you should hire me over anybody else. It makes a difference. So, temperature check. How you guys doing? You good? All right. We're not done yet. So, this is what I'll say. Establishing value and benefit. We need to get out of our head that what we do is open a door. I would argue with you that the bulk of our work, our true value and benefit to our client comes from the minute we start writing a contract through close. See, everything before that, they can Google, they can get on Zillow, they can drive neighborhoods, they can do all those things. They could potentially find the house themselves. But those next steps, the strategy of next is all you. How do we buy? What does it look like? How do I leverage my loan? The vendors, the local resources, what don't I know? What don't I know about down the street? What don't I know about areas, the airport noise? All of those things that you take classes on, you're driving the streets, you're talking to people, you're spending quality time in the community you serve. That's the game changer. The average buyer, and I heard this on a great webinar yesterday, average buyer thinks you and I work about 15 hours on each contract sale. The truth of the matter is you're in it for about 80 to 100 hours. What's so hard is when you and I take a listing, the sign goes in the yard, you see this flurry of activity, you might have a broker caravan, you might have open houses, and then they see the contract and everything. So there's this constant activity level. With buyers, sometimes they don't see everything you're doing behind the scenes, the daily calls to vendors, to home inspectors, to the lender. All of that makes a difference. Those updates that you do. Now, can I give you a quick pro tip? A lot of times when you and I are doing phone updates, if you're selling to a pair, a duo, a married couple, what I would say is this: you may only be talking to one person that's available all the time, right? Maybe you're sending a voicemail, maybe you're sending a text because one person's super responsive. That's awesome. But when you're working with a couple, I want you to be emailing both of them the follow up after every call. See, if you and I are just in the habit of picking up the phone, having the single conversation, and expecting that full conversation to be translated, nah, it doesn't work like that. I really want you to email both. As per my conversation with Beth just now, these are the things I'd like you to know. And this is next steps. Anytime you've got multiple people in a contractual situation, buyer or seller, communicate with everybody in writing because then you get to refer back to it. It helps people feel part of the process, especially when you've got somebody who maybe is traveling for work, maybe is not as responsive on the phone, all of those things. Pro tip. Okay, this is the hard part. So let's go back. We did all of these things, 8 hours, even before we're talking about targets, supporting strategy, all of that. And you're like, well, maybe we got to talk about how I get paid because it's not in the MLS anymore. You're absolutely right. And this was the most simple script I've ever heard. So this is everything I do for you, and this is how I show up. How would you like to pay my fee? We have several options. What I loved about that, it was so simple and direct because when you and I go take a listing, we say, okay, these are all the things I'm going to do, and this is my fee. And you may have a conversation with the seller in negotiating that, but this is my fee. With the buyer, we haven't always gotten comfortable with that, and I respect it. Some of us have not used the buyer broker to the extent maybe we could have from the 90s forward. And so I want you to get very comfortable with saying, "This is my fee. How would you like to pay?" Now, I've got 3 options. You absolutely can come to closing, and pay at close of escrow as part of your closing costs. We can request the seller to do a concession to cover closing costs that you may have for your loan or escrow and title, and that can include my buyer broker fee. Or finally, if you authorize me in advance of writing the offer, I'll submit a direct pay form from seller to buyer broker, and let's see what we can negotiate. See, there's multiple different ways that we can do this to fit your needs. It's so important that you and I set out options and the buyer goes, yeah, that makes sense. Because nobody puts a buyer in a corner. We're giving them options. And that's the key in all of this. That's what is so important as we go forward in our fiduciary, in our explanations. How am I paid? One of these 3 ways. How would you like to pay me? So at EXP, because I know there's been perhaps some confusion on the street. When I go take a listing, I'm going to negotiate my fee solely. This is my listing compensation. EXP Realty does not share our listing compensation with a buyer broker. Whatever I negotiate is for listing solely. If a buyer broker shows up, they absolutely can work in one of these 3 ways to get paid. See, what has occurred in the removal of compensation from the MLS, that was a uniform, unilateral offer of compensation. Took the seller out of that decision making because a lot of times they were like, yeah, we went in as a listing agent, negotiated the total fee, and then just put whatever on MLS we felt was appropriate. Those are gone. That's like the dinosaurs. It doesn't exist anymore. So as a result, you and I have to be very focused in taking care of the client. They're the decision maker. They should be the center point of that. So what does it look like? We can do buyer pays buyer broker, seller pays buyer's broker, or we can negotiate concessions. Super easy, super quick. And you know what? We actually, as a company, created a form back in April because we knew VA had not done their updates yet. And we wanted to make sure we were well in advance taking care of our veterans. We believe that everybody should be able to do this. And so as a result, we've got a direct pay form that's super straightforward, super easy to use. And honestly, anybody in the industry can use it. That's what's important to us. So how would you like to pay my fee? There's several options. Now, the direct compensation, the quick tips, I would submit it prior to showing. Like, hey, seller, are you willing to offer compensation? Let's get it in writing. If we can get it in writing, my buyer may be more willing to negotiate. They may look at different things. Cool. Whatever my buyer wants. At the end of the day, they're driving. I'm here to be their guide and tell them what to expect. Now, this is what's cool. The way we've designed this form is it's bound to the property and the seller, not to the buyer. So if I'm a buyer's agent and a new property comes on the market and it's in a sweet spot price range that I have a lot of buyers I'm working with, I can get that signed and show multiple buyers and have compensation. It's an opportunity. And so when we look at how this business continues to evolve and our new challenges and ways to overcome them, this forum is exactly that. It does work for VA. It allows us to act as escrow instructions directly to title. So if I put the property under contract and it closes, this goes into title and we know exactly how much the buyer broker is getting paid. It's very simple, very easy. And that's what we wanted to do. We wanted anybody to be able to pick this up and go, "Oh, I get it. I see it." Now, let's go to the hard part. These are common questions our brokers have been fielding for the last couple of weeks. So, would it be okay if you and I just kind of riff a little bit? And I want to share with you this. EXP, we have updated our buyer toolkit. I'm so incredibly excited about it. Our buyer toolkit, and we are going to be adding more and more and more, including some of these common questions. So, real quickly, if I'm out of town, does the agent covering me need a signed buyer broker? So for instance, Lauren goes out of town this weekend. I'm covering for her. She's got a signed buyer broker, but I'm not on it. Whose key is hitting that lockbox? Mine. As a result, best practice would be have me on the buyer broker or do just a quick addition that adds me as the covering agent for a set period of time. So if that buyer looks at a house this weekend and there's an audit by the MLS, I'm covered and not fined, and so is Lauren. Also, if that buyer decides to write, I have the authority to do that on Lauren's behalf and she gets paid. That's what we do in the business. We take care of each other. So why not set you up for success? Now, what if I'm on a team and I'm a showing agent? Well, at EXP, if you've got a showing agent, they have to be with our company. It's an agency thing. If you are on a team, what I would say, treat it just like you would your listing. If I'm the team leader, I'm going to have each of my team members that are interacting with that agent or that client on the listing agreement. I would do the same on my buyer broker. So again, if I'm on Lauren's team, I'm going to go ahead and she's going to be on it as team leader and so am I. So both of us are covered. It's a best practice. Now, will this get ironed out over the term of the future? Yeah, maybe. But I think right now for best practices and knowing that there are fines for accessing a lockbox without a signed buyer broker, I want to protect you. I want you to keep your hard-earned money in your pocket and not be giving it to the MLS. So if you're on a team, anybody on the team who is showing that buyer should be mentioned on the buyer broker agreement. It's a good best practice as we know today. Now, if my buyer agrees to pay me more, because there's new home construction. I love this question. New home construction, let's say they're offering more than what I've agreed to. Can I amend my agreement? Now, we've gone back and forth and double checked on the NAR FAQ, and the short answer is yes. Any agreement may be amended in writing. Now, let's talk about best practices. If I'm working with a buyer and they're looking at residential resale and they're looking at new construction, I may put on my buyer broker that differential. Maybe for residential resale, it's this amount. But if I sell something that's new construction, maybe it's a higher charge because, and let's break this down so we can talk about it with our clients. The new construction is more because one, I'm going to go out and take pictures for you at each stage of construction. I'm also going to be working through you. So my 80 to 100 hours that I would normally do on a residential resale just got compounded and over 5 months or 6 months or a year, depending on what new construction is in your market. So there's a level of reasonability there. Also be talking to them about what they can expect from the new home construction. So absolutely, you can have that point of differentiation on your original buyer broker, and you're not having to go back and amend. Can you amend? Yes. Do it in writing. Do it prior to showing. If you're doing it after showing, it's going to be messy in the middle, and I really want you to call your broker. Now, This question was fantastic. If the agent is representing their family, maybe they are the buyer. Do they need a buyer broker agreement? And I'm going to argue, yeah, because if me and my family are going out, we're going to buy a new home for ourselves. Um, the others are not listed. I'm working on their behalf as an agent, even though I am an agent. Yeah, just sign a buyer broker. It's best practice, especially if the MLS audits, everything is clean. Why wouldn't you? It's just a piece of paper. If the buyer starts unrepresented and then after contract acceptance goes, yeah, this is more complicated than I thought. I'd really like representation. It's a great question. And it does happen. This is what I would say. One, as an agent, do you want to take on that fiduciary liability? Because your seller has entered into the contract with you as a single agent. They recognize the buyer is unrepresented on the other side. So, do you, as the listing agent, want to get into a dual agency or transaction broker situation? You may not want to. It's just an agency thing. I'm not even talking about compensation. So, stay focused on agency. I would submit to you if a buyer after the fact says, wow, I really want representation. And oh, by the way, I'm willing to pay for it. That's great. You will need to sign buyer broker and obviously the agency disclosure. But if you're the listing agent, it's a little sticky. Did the seller give you permission to do that? Because if they didn't, please call your broker. It's a little uncomfortable there. All right. I love this question. What if the buyer will not sign the buyer broker? Okay, you don't get to work with them. And I know some of you are like, but I love these people. They're really good friends. Cool. Under the NAR settlement that you and I have agreed to, because we're NAR members and it covers us as of August 17th. If we don't have a signed buyer broker and we open up a lockbox, I'm seeing fines from $500 to $5,000. How many of those do you want? And that's per lockbox hit in many instances. Are you willing to open up a house and risk that? And then what if they want to write an offer? And then you have to have the buyer broker signed. And now you've got to negotiate what your fee is. It puts the cart before the horse. It makes it more awkward. And honestly, if people don't respect you out of the gate, when are they going to earn respect for you? So my answer is no. I see you. I respect you. You don't have to sign with me. I also don't have to work with you. That's what I would say to that. Now, must I have a buyer broker for tenants? This is kind of a nuanced question. And so when you look at the settlement, leases were not covered, right? This is strictly residential resale. That being said, all the MLSs have removed compensation or will be removing compensation from all types of property. That includes rentals. So if you're going out and you're representing a tenant on Saturday, Sunday, or Monday, I would submit to you, if you want to get paid, you have to have a plan. And that plan is going to be a tenant broker or buyer broker. Now, of course, the compensation could be coming from the seller because that's typical in your market and you can invoice and all of those things. But if you don't have it, you're not guaranteed. So you're working for free. And at the end of the day, I don't want you working for free. You work too hard. You have too much knowledge. Why not get it? This question, super love. If I'm holding an open house for my seller, do I need a buyer broker? No, but. And the reason I go into the but. So no, but if you get to a point where you're giving them more information, I'm standing in the open house, they come through, they're asking all these questions, how many square feet, how many bedrooms, that they can find on Zillow, that they can find on Google. Okay, no problem. But if they get to a point where they start to cross over what they can't Google and they start to pick your brain, well, tell us about recent sales. What should we know about airport noise? Is there a problem here with the sewer district? Y'all, you are now starting to act as a secret agent and you'll need a buyer broker. So best case scenario is if you're having an open house this weekend, I want you to have that single property buyer broker at the ready, because if you've got folks that come in and they're like, wow, I really like you. I'm really jiving. We want to work together. This is great. Super. You get to that point where they start to ask more questions, definitely go into buyer broker. So just a couple more questions. Direct compensation for the seller we talked about, but let's check this out as far as our buyer broker. Why is EXP's buyer broker not exclusive? And very bluntly, we wanted to make sure that you all as our agents had a way to communicate with buyers that was so easy and streamlined. That's why we released the single property buyer broker. It's kind of an off-ramp for those Zillow leads, those cold calls, those sign calls that allow you to have a very comfortable conversation with a single property, really establish rapport, trust, and then start to graduate. Now, we also recognize in the marketplace, there's some buyers that are just not willing to commit. Okay. So as a result, we wanted to make sure that you had that in between, and that in between is the EXP buyer broker. We affectionately call it Buyer Broker 2.0. And really what it is about is I show up and take care of you, and I get paid when I write the offer and take you through. Now, could somebody sign multiple of these? Yes, it's non-exclusive. But at the end of the day, if I'm showing my value and I'm really accentuating how I work for you, why would they go anywhere else? And that becomes the opportunity. We didn't want a barrier to sign. We wanted you to be able to get it signed and accentuate your value all the way through. That was critical to us. Now, what if the compensation is short, right? You're under contract or you're negotiating the contract. Seller comes back and says, yep, I'll pay you, but they're maybe a 0.5% short of what you've agreed to on your buyer broker. You have a couple of options. I want you to ask your buyer what they want to do. Don't assume that you automatically need to come down. We just had this scenario with one of our top teams. It was a 0.5% off, and the buyer's agent crushed it. They were absolutely fantastic. Did all of these things. We had a young professional understanding sales that was the buyer, and we're 0.5% off. Seller was willing to pay up so much, and there was just a delta. Okay, cool. In that situation, the buyer's agent was like, "Well, I could come down, and that way, everything else on the offer is for you, and it looks really good." And the buyer goes, "Are you sure? Why would you do that?" See, the buyer found value where we didn't. I loved this story because it was so critical to connect those pieces. What does the buyer want? You and I agreed to this. Seller's willing to make up almost all of it. How do you want to continue to work together? How would you like to pay my fee? And if the buyer says, I don't have the money, I can't do it, can you come down? Absolutely. That's your call. It's your business. But I want you to be really, really careful. Yeah. And so I love this as far as buyer broker. There is a separate EXP buyer broker. That is part of our buyer's toolkit. We've got the single property buyer broker as well as the buyer broker 2.0. Both of these are in SkySlope for you, and we're really excited to have you out and using them. They're really easy to use. We've been recognized by the Consumer Federation of America as making this one of the easiest buyer brokers in the country to understand and really leverage. So that's really exciting for us. So this is one more thing. What if my buyer says they only want to see houses where the seller is offering compensation? What do I do? And this is where I would say in your buyer broker, under section 7 here, under additional terms, put it in writing what they're directing you to do. We didn't want to have just a checkbox. We need it to be a discussion of what the buyer wants, because the last thing we ever want to do is for the buyer to limit themselves in looking at properties that could fit their need. See, the sellers may say, and we're used to this, right? Oh, I'm not going to give a home warranty. I'm not going to leave the washer and dryer. You know what? I'm totally asking for the washer and dryer. I am absolutely asking for a home warranty. You know what? I'm totally going to ask for closing costs. So at the end of the day, can you? Sure. Put it in additional terms. Be specific and revisit it early and often with your buyers because they may change their mind. I don't want you to limit yourself from showing a property that a buyer may want to write on, because the seller hasn't advertised somewhere on a billboard or skywriting or left flyers that they would do compensation. So ask, try. Why not? Everything is a negotiation. We've always done it. There's no reason to limit it now. This is what I'll say in conclusion. You're totally ready. I'm so proud of our EXP agents. You are some of the best prepared in the industry because you've been engaged, you're following, you're attending meetings with your state broker teams, you've been on these Zooms with us, and I'm so incredibly excited. We've got more tools we're going to continue to roll out for you as the market shifts and changes and we learn best practices together. I want you to know the rules of your MLS, what you can and can't do, and y'all don't test them. If you have a question, call the hotline at the MLS. Don't put it out there and get fined. Also, I want you to be so conversational in the forums that it rolls off the back of your tongue. My former business partner, she and I would always go to Taco Tuesday, and we'd practice forums together every Tuesday just to see what was up, what have we learned, and then we'd invite people to come with us so they could present a forum to us, and we'd just have lunch. It was conversation. I mean, chips and salsa, nothing makes conversation better. I want you to get into the benefit of you, the package of hiring you. See, there's unlimited benefits if you just package it in a way that meets the buyer where they're at. When you focus on all of that, it makes a huge, huge difference. Now, I'm seeing some questions come in on YouTube, and I really appreciate it. I'm gonna asking this when you have to go down, and I'll go back one slide. If you're there's a delta between what the seller will pay and what the buyer has agreed to up front, and the buyer just has nothing left in the tank. They have no more money, and you really want to make it work. Yes, you'll need to adjust that commission down. And my best suggestion is to do it right on the buyer broker and have them initial for sure. The form right now on form for short-term representation, we're in the process of producing that for you. So we should have that rolled out in the next few days, hoping by end of next week. But for now, all I would do is just a Word document that says, Lauren Coleman is covering for Holly Mabery this date to this date and is part of the buyer broker agreement. Attach it, buyer signs, away you go. Make it easy. Like none of this should be rocket science. We're here to help people, and that's the goal. Guys, I can't thank you enough. When it comes to where we're headed and what it looks like, get your updated EXP toolkit for the buyers. You can find it here. We're continuing to put more value in for you. You're prepared. You've got this. And at the end of the day, when you package your benefit together, no one can stop you. Thanks for spending a little bit of time with me this afternoon. This will be recorded and available to you on YouTube as we go forward. Thanks all.